Daniel was scrolling through his feed when a sudden burst of notifications lit up his phone. He tapped Instagram and froze as Lydia's new post appeared at the top of his screen. She had announced that he would take a polygraph test before their wedding to prove his honesty. Her caption claimed that true love had nothing to hide, and her friends cheered her on loudly. Daniel felt the shock hit first, then the humiliation of seeing their private life made public. He messaged her instantly, asking why she would expose him so boldly to everyone online. When she brushed it off, he told her that if she wanted the test, she should take it first. Lydia refused without hesitation, and Daniel realized something was deeply wrong beneath her confidence. Lydia stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed as Daniel repeated his request for fairness. She kept insisting that the polygraph was only meant for him and that her taking it made no sense. Daniel tried to stay calm, but every word she said pushed him closer to losing his patience. He asked her why she needed proof of love if she claimed to trust him so completely before. Lydia dodged the question and accused him of turning everything into a dramatic argument. Daniel reminded her that she was the one who broadcast their private life to hundreds of people. The tension grew thicker as Lydia raised her voice, calling him defensive and overly sensitive. Daniel replied that trust should work both ways and not be used as a tool to humiliate someone. She rolled her eyes and said he was making their relationship harder than it needed to be. Daniel felt something snap inside him as he realized she had no intention of being transparent. He pulled out his phone and opened the website of a local polygraph center without hesitation. Lydia watched him in disbelief as he scheduled 2 appointments on consecutive days. She demanded to know what he was doing and why he would dare involve a real examiner. Daniel calmly told her that if she wanted truth, then truth would be given to both of them. Lydia shouted that he was trying to trap her and turn the internet against her unfairly. He responded that the internet already saw everything she posted, and he was simply leveling the field. Her frustration spiked, and she grabbed her phone to call her mother for support immediately. Within minutes, her mother stormed into the call and accused Daniel of disrespecting their family. Daniel explained the situation plainly and said he only expected equal accountability from both sides. Lydia's mother argued that Lydia had good intentions and that he was ruining the spirit of the wedding. Daniel corrected her and said that a wedding built on accusations had no spirit left to protect. Lydia attempted to guilt-trip him by saying the test was a symbol of loyalty, not suspicion. He asked her how loyalty could exist when only one person was forced to prove innocence publicly. She refused to answer and instead claimed Daniel was hiding something and feared exposure. Daniel told her that if he feared anything, it was marrying someone who played with trust. He showed her the confirmation emails of the scheduled tests, both booked under his name. Lydia tried to grab his phone, demanding he cancel the appointments immediately and apologize. Daniel stepped back and said that canceling would only reinforce the unfairness she created. Her temper escalated, and she slammed a cabinet door hard enough to rattle the glasses inside. Daniel took a deep breath and reminded himself that anger would only make things worse. He told her they would both take the test and that nothing would change his decision now. Lydia's eyes filled with a mix of panic and fury as she realized he meant every word he said. She tried one last time to insist that the post was just a joke, but Daniel did not believe her. He reminded her that jokes do not come with long captions and cheering crowds of comments. Lydia fell silent as the weight of the situation settled into the room like thick, heavy smoke. Daniel left the kitchen quietly, knowing the next step would reveal far more than either expected. Lydia arrived at the polygraph center wearing a stiff smile that fooled no one in the lobby. Daniel sat beside her in silence, watching her twist the strap of her purse nervously. She kept insisting she was calm, but her foot tapped so fast that the chair trembled slightly. The examiner called her name, and she shot Daniel a sharp look before following him inside. Daniel stayed in the waiting area, listening to the faint sound of muffled voices behind the door. He wondered how they had reached this point so quickly, and why everything felt so fragile. Inside the room, Lydia tried to appear composed as the examiner attached the sensors to her. Her breathing quickened when he explained how the machine recorded stress responses clearly. She claimed she had nothing to hide, but her hands tightened into fists on her lap instantly. The examiner began with neutral questions, and the machine traced steady lines across the screen. When he shifted to relationship topics, Lydia's pulse jumped before she even opened her mouth. She answered softly at first, insisting she had always been loyal and always honest with Daniel. The examiner watched the spikes rise sharply and noted each reaction without judgment. Lydia swallowed hard when asked if she had ever been intimate with someone else since dating Daniel. Her voice cracked as she said no, but the lines on the graph jumped violently upward. She tried to blame the spikes on nerves, but her trembling hands betrayed her growing fear. The examiner continued gently, asking if she had lied about her work schedule in recent months. Another spike cut across the screen like a lightning bolt as she whispered a shaky denial. Lydia began rambling explanations about stress, deadlines, and misunderstandings at the office. Her words tangled together as the machine continued to reveal the truth behind them. The examiner paused before asking the final set of questions, giving her a moment to breathe. When he asked if she had hidden anything significant from Daniel before the engagement, she froze. Her eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape from the question itself. She answered yes, then no, then claimed she did not understand the question at all. The examiner repeated it slowly, and this time she whispered a faint yes with trembling lips. A heavy silence settled as the machine confirmed what her voice already revealed clearly. Lydia broke down, covering her face with both hands as the pressure finally shattered her composure. She confessed that she had slept with her coworker Mark twice during a stressful period at work. Her voice shook as she insisted it meant nothing and that she regretted it every single day. The examiner remained neutral while Lydia cried, apologizing repeatedly to no one in particular. When the session ended, she stepped out with red eyes and avoided Daniel's gaze completely. Daniel felt his stomach drop as he saw her expression and understood the truth without a word. He asked her quietly what the results were, but she begged him to talk somewhere private later. Daniel refused and insisted they address everything now, not after another wave of excuses. Lydia finally admitted her infidelity in a broken voice that barely reached his ears. Daniel felt everything inside him go still, as if time paused between one heartbeat and the next. Lydia reached for his hand, but he stepped back as the meaning of her confession sank deeply. She whispered that she was scared and that the test did not reflect her love for him anymore. Daniel replied that love without honesty was only a performance waiting to collapse eventually. Lydia cried harder as he walked past her, knowing this truth would change everything forever. Daniel sat in the living room, staring at the engagement photos on the wall. He knew what he had to do, but the weight of it pressed hard against his chest. Lydia appeared at the doorway, her eyes red and voice trembling as she pleaded. She begged him to reconsider, claiming the affair was a mistake and meant nothing. Daniel shook his head slowly, his jaw tight, refusing to let her words sway him. He told her that trust once broken could not simply be repaired with apologies. Lydia accused him of overreacting, saying the polygraph was an unfair test of love. Daniel reminded her that she had made their private life public first on social media. Her mother soon arrived, furious and demanding Daniel forgive Lydia immediately. She claimed Daniel was cruel and that a wedding should never end over one mistake. Daniel listened patiently, but did not flinch from his decision, keeping his voice calm. He explained that the wedding contract and finances were under his name entirely. Lydia's mother shouted, insisting he should share the costs of canceling the event. Daniel replied firmly that fairness meant accountability, not financial manipulation. He told Lydia that she needed to pack her things and leave the house without delay. Lydia pleaded again, saying the separation was unfair and that he was punishing her. Daniel reminded her that honesty could not be negotiated and could not be ignored. She tried to blame him for forcing the polygraph, claiming he pushed her into humiliation. Daniel responded that the choice to be transparent was hers, not his to make alone. Her father called, adding pressure and demanding Daniel think of their family reputation. Daniel remained calm, stating that reputation meant nothing if built on lies and deceit. Lydia's brother arrived, trying to mediate, but Daniel refused to discuss alternative solutions. He said that a marriage without truth would only lead to years of regret and pain. Lydia shouted that he was heartless, but Daniel reminded her the truth was heartless first. He told her he had to protect himself from a future built on manipulation and lies. Lydia's mother threatened legal action to reclaim money, claiming he owed her daughter fairness. Daniel replied that contracts and records showed he was fully within his rights legally. He warned her that any attempt to force him would be met with legal consequences immediately. Lydia collapsed on the couch, weeping, realizing no argument could change Daniel's mind. Daniel explained that love required honesty, and without it, there could be no partnership. He told her he forgave her mistakes in his heart, but could not continue a life with betrayal. Lydia begged for one more chance, swearing she would never hurt him again. Daniel repeated that promises could not replace trust, especially after deceit was revealed. She screamed, called him cruel, and said he was destroying her life publicly and privately. Daniel reminded her that she had already made the situation public and that consequences followed. He explained that removing her from the house was necessary for both their sakes. Lydia finally went to gather her belongings, sobbing and pleading for understanding. Daniel stayed seated, watching her pack silently, his mind steady and decision unwavering. When she left, the door clicked softly behind her, and a heavy silence filled the house. Daniel sat back, letting out a long breath, realizing the life he planned was now gone. He knew this was the only way to preserve his future and protect himself from further deceit. The house felt empty, but for the first time in weeks, Daniel felt a quiet sense of relief. He understood the pain would linger, but he also knew he had acted with integrity and clarity. The next morning, Daniel noticed his phone buzzing nonstop with notifications from social media. Lydia had posted a long story claiming he was controlling and refused to forgive her mistakes. Her friends and family quickly commented, offering support and criticizing Daniel publicly. Daniel read the posts silently, realizing how quickly the narrative had started to spread. He felt a mix of frustration and disbelief that private matters were now public entertainment. People he barely knew began sending messages, taking sides without knowing the full story. Lydia tagged friends in every post, amplifying the drama and pushing her version of events. Daniel's close friends called him directly, asking if what they saw online was true. He explained the truth carefully, emphasizing that Lydia had manipulated the narrative first. Despite his explanations, some people were skeptical, questioning whether he was overreacting. Daniel ignored trolls and focused on his inner circle who trusted his perspective fully. Lydia's mother shared screenshots to her social media, claiming Daniel had humiliated Lydia unfairly. Her posts implied that he forced the polygraph and intentionally embarrassed her to end the engagement. Daniel resisted responding publicly, knowing any post could escalate the situation further. He told his friends to avoid engaging online, warning that arguments would only feed the drama. Meanwhile, Lydia's posts gained traction, and strangers began commenting on their relationship. Some accused Daniel of cruelty, while others speculated about the polygraph results. Daniel's family quietly shared messages clarifying the truth, without nomming Lydia directly. Those posts started to balance the narrative, slowly revealing that Daniel had been fair and patient. Lydia called Daniel multiple times, her voice shaking as she demanded he stop letting people know. He calmly replied that she was the one who had posted private details publicly first. Daniel explained that transparency was necessary to prevent lies from spreading unchecked. She yelled that he was ruining her reputation and that everyone would think she was a liar. Daniel reminded her that facts could not be hidden forever, and truth eventually surfaces. He refused to argue further, telling her that his focus was on clarity and moving forward. Lydia sent long messages accusing him of betrayal, but he read them quietly without replying. The social media storm continued for days, with new posts, comments, and reactions piling up. Daniel avoided engaging directly, knowing that confrontation would only escalate the feud. Close friends offered moral support, assuring him that time would reveal the real story. Lydia's friends began to realize inconsistencies in her posts, quietly questioning her version. Some admitted privately that she had exaggerated events to make herself look sympathetic. Daniel noticed that public opinion slowly shifted as evidence of the polygraph results became known. He remained calm, letting the truth speak for itself without creating more drama online. Lydia tried to threaten legal action over defamation, but Daniel ignored her attempts. Her posts gradually became defensive, claiming victimhood as her support network dwindled. Daniel received messages of support from people who had witnessed the situation firsthand. The social media storm began to settle as facts circulated, reducing the intensity of the conflict. Lydia continued posting occasionally, but fewer people engaged with her narratives. Daniel maintained distance, focusing on rebuilding his own life and preserving his peace. He realized that public perception would eventually catch up to reality with patience and silence. By the end of the week, the frenzy had calmed, leaving only lingering whispers and private conversations. Daniel felt relief as the truth slowly regained its place, and the online chaos lost its grip on him. He understood that honesty, patience, and restraint were more powerful than any public argument. The lesson was clear. Transparency wins in the long run, even when others try to manipulate the story. A few days later, Daniel received a call from Mark, the coworker Lydia had been involved with. Mark's voice was nervous and hesitant as he admitted the affair had happened. He explained that Lydia had told him she was in a confusing period and that it meant nothing. Daniel listened carefully, trying to remain calm despite the anger simmering inside him. Mark apologized repeatedly, claiming he never meant to hurt Daniel or interfere with the engagement. Daniel warned him that Lydia was sharing more details with others, which could cause serious problems. Mark seemed shocked, realizing the potential consequences of Lydia's loose talk. He asked Daniel what he should do, clearly unsure of how to handle the fallout. Daniel told him to be honest with anyone involved and stop hiding from the truth. Mark agreed, promising to clarify the situation with his girlfriend immediately. Later that evening, Mark's girlfriend discovered text messages and calls from Lydia. She confronted him angrily, demanding to know why he had kept the affair secret. Mark admitted the truth, explaining that Lydia had misled him about her relationship status. His girlfriend ended the relationship on the spot, leaving Mark shocked and regretful. Daniel received an update from Mark, who sounded remorseful and shaken by the breakup. He realized that Lydia's actions were affecting everyone around her, not just himself. Daniel reflected on how lies could ripple outward, causing damage far beyond the original betrayal. He understood that accountability was necessary not only for Lydia, but for those around her. Meanwhile, Lydia continued posting online, claiming that Daniel had forced her into public humiliation. Daniel ignored her posts, knowing that her narrative was already losing credibility. He focused on truthfully handling the situation and avoiding unnecessary conflict. Mark called again to thank Daniel for his guidance, and admitted he had no idea how serious things had become. Daniel reminded him that honesty and transparency were the only ways to repair personal integrity. Mark promised to make amends with anyone affected by the misinformation, starting with his ex-girlfriend. Daniel felt a measure of satisfaction, knowing that the truth was helping to prevent further harm. Lydia, unaware of the impact, continued trying to control the story and her reputation online. Daniel's friends reached out, sharing their disbelief at how quickly Lydia's manipulations were unraveling. They noted that Mark's breakup showed the real consequences of her actions spreading outward. Daniel observed quietly as Lydia's network began questioning her honesty behind her back. Some of her friends admitted privately that they had been misled and used as pawns in her story. Daniel felt relieved that the truth was finally reaching people who mattered without his interference. He realized that controlling narratives online was impossible when facts were undeniable. Mark's honesty had triggered a chain reaction, leading to accountability across multiple relationships. Daniel took note of the lessons. Deceit has consequences that extend far beyond the initial betrayal. He watched as Lydia's influence over others diminished, leaving her isolated and defensive. Mark continued trying to repair his relationships, showing that truth could begin to heal wounds. Daniel felt a growing sense of closure as the ripple effects of Lydia's lies became evident. He understood that moving forward required patience and faith in honesty, not retaliation. As the week ended, Daniel felt the chaos of the past weeks start to settle naturally. He knew the polygraph had uncovered more than Lydia's betrayal. It had revealed the fragility of false narratives. Daniel felt a sense of calm, confident that truth would continue to guide the outcomes around him. He remained firm in his boundaries, knowing that protecting himself was the only responsible choice. By the time Mark fully explained everything to his ex, Daniel saw how justice could unfold quietly. The story was no longer just about him and Lydia. It had become a lesson for everyone involved. Daniel finally felt the first real sense of peace since discovering Lydia's deceit. 6 weeks after the breakup, Lydia had moved back into her parents' house quietly. Her mother scolded her for letting the polygraph story leak and embarrassing the family. Lydia tried to explain that it was Daniel who forced the situation, but her mother was unconvinced. She spent hours scrolling through social media, seeing the aftermath of her posts and drama. Her friends began admitting privately that she had planted doubts about Daniel for weeks. They confessed they had been manipulated to believe Daniel was untrustworthy. Lydia felt a growing sense of isolation as the truth about her behavior became clear. Meanwhile, Daniel was taking care of canceling all wedding arrangements with the vendors. The total loss added up to nearly $13,000, but he handled every call and refund personally. He informed guests calmly, explaining that the wedding was canceled due to personal reasons. Some people expressed disappointment, but most understood and respected his decision. Lydia briefly considered filing a lawsuit, claiming defamation and emotional distress. Daniel consulted his lawyer immediately and responded with clear evidence and contracts. The potential lawsuit was quickly dismissed, and Lydia decided not to pursue it further. Her Instagram account was switched to private, reducing her ability to broadcast drama. She spent most days at home, reflecting on her actions and the consequences she faced. Her friends stopped visiting as often, realizing that supporting her public posts was misleading. Daniel, on the other hand, focused on his own healing and regaining personal stability. He spent time with family and close friends, avoiding any contact with Lydia entirely. The polygraph results remained a private reminder of the truth he had uncovered. Daniel began journaling to process his feelings and track the progress of moving on. He reflected on how deception had nearly cost him years of happiness and trust. Lydia occasionally tried to reach out, but Daniel maintained firm boundaries. He replied minimally when necessary, avoiding emotional arguments or confrontations. Over time, the intensity of social media posts and online discussions significantly declined. Lydia's attempts to manipulate public opinion lost traction as fewer people engaged. Daniel noticed that those who had doubted him were beginning to acknowledge the truth quietly. He felt relief, knowing that the story was settling into a more accurate narrative. Friends who had been caught in Lydia's schemes apologized for believing her initially. Daniel accepted their apologies and encouraged them to move on without lingering guilt. He realized that personal integrity mattered more than defending himself publicly online. Lydia's mother began pressuring her to reflect and rebuild trust in her own relationships. Lydia spent days in silence, considering how her actions had impacted both herself and others. Daniel made small adjustments in his daily life, enjoying routines without the stress of deception. He booked short trips alone, using the time to recharge and gain perspective on future relationships. His focus shifted from what Lydia had done to what he wanted for his own life moving forward. Daniel maintained contact with supportive friends, valuing their honesty and guidance. He felt empowered by having the polygraph results confirm his instincts early in the process. The aftermath taught him the importance of boundaries, transparency, and personal accountability. Lydia's attempts to regain control faded, as Daniel remained composed and undistracted. Daniel finally accepted that closure came from understanding, not revenge or confrontation. He reflected on the ordeal with gratitude for his own clarity and resilience. Life began to feel lighter, and the constant tension that had dominated weeks before diminished. Daniel committed to staying aware, but not obsessing over the past or Lydia's choices. He realized that protecting himself and valuing honesty were essential lessons for the future. By the end of the 6 weeks, Daniel felt a renewed sense of peace and control over his life. He understood that growth and healing were ongoing, but the worst of the storm had passed. Daniel's focus shifted fully toward rebuilding his happiness and avoiding toxic situations entirely. Daniel sat alone in his apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it felt lighter than before. He realized the polygraph had saved him from marrying someone untrustworthy. The truth revealed by the test had spared him years of lies and manipulation. He understood that Lydia had tried to shape him as someone with trust issues. Daniel felt relieved knowing he had acted with integrity, not anger or revenge. He allowed himself to grieve the relationship while recognizing the lesson it taught. The $400 spent on the first polygraph seemed small compared to the life he avoided. Daniel decided to step back from dating and focus on his own personal growth. He valued honesty and boundaries more than ever, determined not to compromise them again. Social media drama faded, leaving Daniel with clarity and a sense of calm he had not felt in months. He realized that some people are incapable of honesty, and avoiding them was protection. Daniel smiled faintly, grateful for the chance to rebuild his life on his own terms. He embraced the freedom to heal and enjoy solitude without the shadow of deception. The ordeal had been painful, but it strengthened his ability to recognize and trust true character. Daniel made a quiet vow to prioritize his peace and integrity in all future relationships. He felt a sense of closure and knew he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. Life felt open again, with possibilities that were now safe from lies and manipulation. Daniel finally breathed deeply, appreciating the lessons learned and the honesty he preserved. He was ready to move forward, free from a past that could no longer control him.